Really going to start machine matzah this week, the Pesach. We're going to push that off 1 week. I want to try something a little different, and we'll start machine matzah next week, and it's a little closer to Pesach. Fake news. And on Tuesday this week in Mitzvah Hashem, Haba Aleinu L'Teva is the yard site of the Noam Elimelech, of the Gens. And there's a bunch of schools associated with the Svarim of the Noam Elimelech, and I want to talk about those a little bit. So just for by way of background information, the Noam Elimelech is Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, is a Talmud. Well, let's just do it the organized way. The Baal Shem Tov is the starter of Hasidus in the early 1700s. His primary Talmud is Mezritcha Magid, and the Mezritcha Magid has a big chabur of Talmidim. The Mamshech Derech, the one who takes over the Mezritcha Magid, the third leg of the stool, is the Rebbe of Elimelech, or the Melech of Lezhensk, who's the first Hasidic Rebbe to move to Poland and give Hasidus, teach Hasidus to the Polish, and his Talmidim are all the greatest Rebbes from Poland. So he's born in let's say 1770, maybe between 1715 and 1720. He dies 1780-ish. He's a very early Rebbe. In the Chassidish Welt, we say, the Gemara, Chazal say, Ein Kairin La'avas El Shleisha. There's only 3 Avos. And we mean Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. In the Chassidish Welt, when we say Ein Kairin La'avas El Shleisha, it means Baal Shem Tov, Mezritcha Magid, and the Rebbe of Elimelech. That's the third Av. The Rebbe of Elimelech is a very primary Rebbe. His Talmidim are, let's say, a lot of famous Rebbes, the Chayze, Reb Mendel of Rimanov, Uri of Strelis, and many, many more. All his Talmidim are the great Rebbes of Poland, and he starts the spread of Hasidus into Poland. Now, in the Chassidish Welt, originally, there was very, very few Svarim published from the greatest Rebbes. The Baal Shem Tov, Kayidua, didn't write anything himself. Even the Maggid didn't really write his own stuff. There was a small sefer published much later, collecting Vertlach, from Talmidim of the Maggid. So, the Noam Elimelech, very much in that same vein. He also never published the sefer B'chayav. He didn't write any Svarim. But a year after he was Nifter, his son, Rabbi Eliezer, published the Sefer Noam Elimelech with his father's Teres. Now, the story of the Sefer was that 22 years earlier, all the Talmidim who were in the Chatzar, who were surrounding the Noam Elimelech, were begging, please write it down. We'd love to have it in a written manner so we could look it over. And he instructed his son. He said, no problem, you could write it down. His son wrote down the Torah from Shabbos before, and on Sunday morning he put it down on his father's table, on the Noam Elimelech's table, to look at it. And the Noam Elimelech saw this paper with the Torah on his table. He read it, and he called his son over and he said, who wrote this? And his son said, what do you mean? This is your Torah that you said yesterday. He says, this I said yesterday? I thought a Malach wrote this. This is and then he told his son, I don't want you to publish this b'chayai, but when I'm no longer here, after I'm nifter, you can publish it. So his son continued writing down, the Torahs from each week as it was, and about 18 months after his father was nifter, he publishes the Sefer Noam Elimelech with the Torahs of the Elimelech of the Gens. The Sefer immediately became very popular. It was it's the first real primary Chassidish Sefer that develops the idea of tzaddik and all that, all the Chassidish ideas that are famous to us, and it became a very popular sefer. Now, ad kedei kach, that there are 2 very specific schools that are associated with the Sefer Noam Elimelech, and that's really why I'm here. I want to talk about those. There are 2 schools that are associated with the Noam Elimelech. The first one I'm not going to talk about, but I'll just say what it is, because it's part of a bigger topic. The first one is that there's a Barkanta school that if a woman is having trouble giving birth, a woman who's pregnant and is in labor is having trouble giving birth. So there's a minig, it's a short-term minig, a skula, to take a Sefer Noam Elimelech and put it under the head of the woman who's trying to give birth, and it will ease the childbirth and make it go smoothly. Now, this is a school out that if you search on Amazon, you could find a Noam Elimelech, a tiny copy, like a microfilm Noam Elimelech that they printed to make it easy. Because to bring a sefer, this big and put it under the head in hospitals could be a little difficult. But you could buy a keychain on Amazon that you could just slide under the pillow before anything starts, and everything's fine. So Ad Kedei Kach, the school is popularized to that level that you could go afterwards and look on Amazon, and you'll see it's available for purchase. So that's school number 1. And that's the one I'm not going to talk about because it's a more complicated shayla. We'll leave that one. There's a second skula that's associated with the Sefer Elimelech, and that's the one that we'll discuss today. Is that there's a school that in the Chassidish Welt they say that if a person has a Elimelech in his house, the house is shomer from all sorts of bad things. Nothing bad will happen to the house that has an Elimelech inside of it. This is a school that's gesagt in the Chassidish Welt. I don't know exactly where it starts, the school, but Al Kapanim I saw in a letter from the Kloisenberger Rebbe, a letter from the Alta Lubavitcher Rebbe, all in Haskamas, this farm that are publishing over some of Reb Meilech's Torah. They say, like, Kayidua, there's the school that anyone that has a Noam Elimelech in their house, the bias is Shamur Mikol Ra, and it has this school. So, I wanted to talk about that school of the bias being Shamur Mikol Ra by having a sefer in it, where maybe that comes from, and if it's okay to believe that and have that and employ such schools. So, Kaidim Kol, there's a Gemara. Not a Gemara that talks about the Noam Elimelech, but there's a Gemara as follows. It's a famous Gemara, it's an Agadati Gemara. The Gemara tells the story of Onkelos Hager. Onkelos was a Roman convert. Onkelos was a nephew of some kind of Roman emperor, and he became a convert to Yiddishkeit. So the Gemara of Avodah and Daf Yud Aleph and Aleph tells us the story of Onkelos. So Onkelos, it says, became a ger and he moved to Yerushalayim and he began teaching Torah. When his uncle, the emperor, found out that Onkelos had become a ger, he sent a troop of soldiers to go collect him and bring him back. It's a bezayin for the Roman government that they should have a nephew who's a ger. The soldiers came and Onkelos engaged them in conversation, and they became gerim and stayed with him. His uncle became infuriated. He sent another troop of soldiers and said, this time, don't discuss religion with him. He came, he had a more mundane discussion, and still they converted and became Jews. The third troop he sends, he says, this time don't discuss anything with him. Take him, collect him, don't talk to him. He says, they pick up Onkelos, the Gemara says, they pick up Onkelos, and as they're walking out the door, Onkelos places his hand on the mezuzah, and this is one of the Makairis for kissing the mezuzah. Onkelos places his hand on the mezuzah, and they're so intrigued by this idea that what's a mezuzah, what's he doing putting his hand on it. And the Gemara says they ask him, my high, and he says, there's a big difference between my king and your king. Your king, the derech is the king sits inside the palace, and he has rings of guards surrounding the doors to protect him from everything on the outside. My king's the opposite. We sit inside our house, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol sits by the door to protect the bias from everything on the outside. Hashem sits on the outside and protects us. Now this is an Agadah Gemara that describes the mezuzah as being a shomer lebayis. The mezuzah is being watching the house from Kol Davara. Now that's an Agadah Gemara, but this Gemara makes it to halacha, to Shulchan Aruch Mamish. Because the Gemara Menachos on Daf Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph, the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara is handling where the placement of mezuzah is. Where's the mezuzah supposed to go on the Pesach? If you have a mezuzah that's wide, a couple inches wide, where does it go? So it says the Gemara, you have to place it b'tefach hasamuch lePesach. You place it on the closest part to where the door faces the outside, to where the door goes outside. So the Gemara says, my taima, either Kadesh Tipaga Berishin, it should be the first thing you bump into when you walk into the house, or Kadesh Tishmar Alav, so that it should watch you. And if the mezuzah would be on the inside of the door, what about the whole outside of the door? That's not being watched. So in order that it should watch the whole door, it should be placed on the outside of the door. And this din is gebracht in Shulchan Aruch. I didn't bring the Shulchan Aruch that Siman, but in Shulchan Aruch it says in Siman Reish Beitas that you're supposed to put the mezuzah as tefach hasamuch lePesach. Says the Shach. What's the reason? So that the entire doorway should be watched. As I said the Shach. So the entire doorway should be watched. So you see the concept of a mezuzah, no less. That's certainly more than any Stam Sefer. A mezuzah, no less, being placed in a manner that it should be capable of being shemer the bias. Meaning the shemir of the bias is something that's like an integral chelik, even if it's being placed in a manner that it could be shemer the bias. So l'chayr, this could be some kind of source. So now I just wanted to point out that the Gilyon Marsha Afanart in the Shulchan Aruch brings down from a Tshuvas Ginas Vradim that says that if someone places a mezuzah l'shem shmira, they put it there only l'shem shmira, not l'shem mitzvah. It says not only is it not a shmira, it makes a danger for them. As I like the Ginas Vradim. Now the makar for that is this very interesting shayla. There's a Yerushalmi and Peah. Yerushalmi and Peah in Parak Aleph tells another story of a mezuzah with a guy and a yid. The Gemara says a story over there that Artivon, whoever that was, he was some sort of non-Jew, sent Rebbe a gift of diamonds worth a lot of money. So it says Rebbe sent him back one mezuzah. So Artivon is not happy about the trade over here. He lost out on this Shalach Manas trade. He says, I sent you something that's worth who knows what, and you sent me back something that Pashut is worth a few dollars to have a scribe write down some words on a parchment. So Rebbe sent him back. No, you sent me something that needs to be watched. I sent you something that watches you. That's the Yerushalmi and Peah. Now, the interesting part over here is that our Tivan, as far as we know, was a guy. He was a non-Jew. A non-Jew does not have the mitzvah of hanging a mezuzah. So the whole tachlis of sending a mezuzah to our Tivan could only have been for the Shmir Shabbat. So, based on this Yerushalmi, there's a shayla in the Be'er Sheva. The Be'er Sheva has a shayla he wants to know, could a Jew sell mezuzahs or give mezuzahs to a guy as a kmeya, as a shmira? It could be a good business. You have a bunch of guys who are worried about fire, they're worried about something, they're superstitious about something happening to their houses. You sell them, I have this charm, you hang it on your door, and with this, your house will be protected from kol davara. Could a Jew sell mezuzahs as a charm? So says the Be'er Sheva, you would think that from this Yerushalmi and Peah, you should have a raya that you could sell mezuzahs to a guy. So you see, he's matched. He says it's not a raya from there because it could be Artivin was on his way to becoming a ger, and Rabbi was really talking about Yichad Hashem, and just like you see that the mezuzah had such a strong impact on Onkelos, on the people that were coming to get Onkelos, and they became gerim, Rabbi was trying to employ that same trick. He was like showing them, look how special HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, and look about Yichad Hashem with the mezuzah. But then he goes on, he brings a rush. The rush in the end of Hilchos Mezuzah says as follows. The Rosh says, "Afal pisha abayis nishmar al yada." Even though yes, it is true that the house is watched by the mezuzah that's on it, because we darshan from the pasuk Shem Recha, etc. Still, mikol makom lo yehei kavanas hamekayma k'dei lishmar abayis. The person who's hanging it up, who's placing the mezuzah, his kavana should not be that it should watch his house. Shnira kilu mechaven lasses like kmeya l'shmira. It looks as if you're like using the mezuzah to make a kmeya for shmira. El yechaven lekayim mitzvahs habayri yisal shetzivanu olau. A person should have in mind to be mekayim the mitzvah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mitzvah. And the sheyesh mezuzah yichudei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the mezuzah has yichud Hashem. That's the parshiyas that are in the mezuzah. V'tamud b'boyei v'tzeisa yizker yichudei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And every time you walk in and out of your house, you're going to be masker the yichud of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'yitin yirasei alpanav, and therefore you'll have yirah shemayim on your face. U'memelu nimshach shetishmar abayis. Says the Rosh, it's very straightforward. It's not a skula. The fact that the mezuzah is shemer abayis is not a skula. It's if you interact with Yichud Hashem and Yirah Shemayim on a daily basis, every time you come in and out of your house, Azasart Bayis is Shamur. The Rosh takes all the fun out of it and says there's nothing schooly about it. It wouldn't even work for a guy who's not paying attention to the Yichud Hashem that's inherent in the mezuzah. Now the Rambam is even harsher. The Rambam in Hilchos Mezuzah, the Rambam says, She'elu atipshim lo yidai lahem shebitlu ha-mitzvah ela she'atzu asu mitzvah gedolah sheyichud Hashem shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'havasei v'havadasei kilu ukmeya. Says these tipshim, not only were they mevatel the mitzvah of mezuzah, which is a grace of mitzvah, they made yichud Hashem and avas Hashem and yiras Hashem into some silly kmeya. So the Rambam is even more harsh than the Rosh. Fine. So because of this, says the Be'er Sheva, l'shitas, he believes that to sell mezuzahs or to gift mezuzahs to a guy l'shem shmira would be aser, and there would be false advertising because it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be a shmira. Mezuzah wouldn't be a shmira if you hung it as a shmira. The shmira of mezuzah is not because you have holy words on your doorstep, because you have holy words in your possession. In your possession, the skula and the shmira of mezuzah is because you be mekayim avas Hashem and yiras Hashem and yichud Hashem. That's the skula they have. He says unless there's ava, unless you're going to get in trouble, you'll be punished for not selling the mezuzah. Otherwise, it would be us to sell mezuzah. So we have in mezuzah a similar concept to shmiras habayis from Svarim Kadeshim, from Psukim or mezuzah. But Lamaisi, you see that it's not at all so pashut, that the shmir is just because it's there. And Adarab, I saw somewhere from Chaim Kanievsky, it's Rashi in Parshas Korach brings down that one of Korach's kashas that he asked to trip up Moshe was he asked Moshe, bayis moli svarim, a house that's full of svarim, does it need a mezuzah or not? Meaning if the house is all full of svarim, do you need a mezuzah in such a house? It doesn't make sense. You have more mezuzahs everywhere you look. And obviously the din is that yes, you still need a mezuzah on it. And what's taka the answer to Korach's kashas? So Chaim Kanievsky said, in this vein, a mezuzah is to focus on Yichud Hashem. It's not about having another psukim, another holy book, another holy article in your house. Of course, a bayis mali svarim is full of holy articles. But if you don't interact with any of them, and none of them are for Yichud Hashem, for Avos Hashem, for Yiras Hashem, then it's just a bayis mali svarim. It's just a warehouse. A warehouse is not deserving of any special protection because it's storing holy things. So l'chera, this is not our source. So now, as far as I can tell, the real source for such an idea that having a specific sefer in the house is a shmira is from the Sefer Raziel HaMalach. Now, I think probably a lot of people have a Raziel HaMalach in the house. You for sure have one in your house. There's people. This is they said those are the original tiny microprinted that you can't read Raziel HaMalach that everyone has. Now, yeah, when do you think Raziel HaMalach was published for the first time? Take a guess. No, we think Raziel HaMalach it's certainly presented to us as a super ancient, Yashan Noishan Sefer. Avraham Avinu, the name Raziel HaMalach, it's in the name. Raziel HaMalach was published for the first time in 1701. Okay, it's like 300 years ago. It's not a very long time ago. And most of the teichen inside of it comes from the Rekeach. From the Sefer Rekeach, there's a section in Sefer Rekeach which is about Kabbalah Maisius and Ziruf Shemus. Okay, but we're jumping steps here. Let's just go through this methodically. The Sefer that this skula was really attached to, that this is popularized from, where L'chayra, the name of the Melech skula comes from, is Raziel HaMalach. Now, on the Sharblat of the Raziel HaMalach that was published in 1701, it's the first Sharblat, it says as follows. It says, this Sefer is a skula to keep in your house, and even someone who doesn't have the wherewithal or the ability to read it, because it's very lofty, just having in your possession alone would be a shmira, and it's shemir the bayis michol nega michol ra, and specifically that there won't be a fire in the house. A person who has a Raziel HaMalach in his house, specifically there won't be a fire in the house. Now in the Hakdama it says that where did the Sefer come from? So the Sefer comes from as follows. In the Zohar says that when Adam Rishon was alive, there was a malach named Raziel HaMalach, who came to teach Adam Rishon all sorts of seidus of tziruf shemus and different shemus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and what you could do with them and how to interact with the shemus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this Raziel HaMalach taught Adam Rishon these shemus, and Adam Rishon wrote them down. And this Sefer that I'm presenting in front of you is the Sefer of Adam Rishon's Chavrusashaf with Raziel HaMalach. And Mamela, it has some of the loftiest and most secret tziruf shemus that exist. And one who has this Sefer in his possession, the bayis will be shamim l'chol davara. This is what it says in the Sharblat to the Sefer Raziel HaMalach. And because of that, it sold like hotcakes, and everyone put it in their house, and it became known to be a big shmir in the house. Now, the problem is that people who blew it up to a bigger size, where it was actually readable, and they looked through it, found that Aleph, it mostly comes from the Sefer Rekeach. A good chunk of it comes from the Sefer Rekeach, who makes no claim that these tziruf shemus that he brings in there are the shemus that were given to Adam Rishon through Raziel HaMalach. So Aleph, most of its time, it comes from a different place. It comes from a different Sefer, from the Sefer Rekeach. And in the Sefer Rekeach, it's tziruf shemus. Sefer Rekeach was a Greisim Makubal, and it's definitely old. It's 800-900 years old. But from other Rishon, the Rekeach doesn't say that though. Rekeach makes no claim that it comes. The Rekeach is a Sefer that's full of Kabbalistic shemus, etc. And he doesn't make that connection. That connection, the Rekeach doesn't make that connection. Comes to Rekeach. Beis, and much more troubling, is many Talmidei Chachamim who were familiar with other things went through it and found that a lot of the tziruf shemus, a lot of the skulas or the Kabbalahs and things that are in there are either Christian or Muslim. Ad kedei kach that some of the icons, like there are pictures drawn in there. Lamashal, someone asked me that. I don't remember who, but the Lamashal, the Magen David, what that's on the Israeli flag, is very, very popular in the Sefer Raziel HaMalach. For all sorts of Kabbalistic cheshbonis, they use that shape of the inverted triangles to create different meanings. But strangely enough, there's another shape that they use to create meaning. That's also a very familiar shape. It's a Shasi Ve'erev. It's a cross. Now, it's not the standard cross that you'll see on the outside of church. It's a little variation on a cross. But there's many, many types of crosses. And one of the shapes that are employed to get the Kabbalistic calculations is a cross also, for example. And there are other ones that are Islamic shapes. So meaning it's a whole big chalent mix of some Jewish, Kabbalistic tziruf shemus, some Christian tziruf shemus, some Islamic tziruf shemus. It's got all sorts of things in there. Plus it even has crosses in there. And ad kedei kach that the Shaila was brought to the Panim Me'iris. Someone came to the Panim Me'iris who took the time and the effort to go through his Raziel HaMalach and found it to be full of very strange things. And it was argued to him that he should no longer keep this in his house. It's certainly not a shmirah to have crosses with Yud Kei Vav Kei written on them in your house. But he wanted to know, is it permitted to burn the Sefer Raziel HaMalach? Because it also has heilige things in there. So could he burn? Now I'm not saying every Raziel HaMalach. I think some of them have been cleaned up today and whatever. But this is a 250. Who? Rav Chaim Kanievsky wrote on it, right? Exactly.
No, he spoke about Rav Chaim went to one of his cars.
He found one. Right, I remember that. Yeah. He came to the Panamiris and he asked him, could he burn it? The Panamiris goes through the Shaila upon him, and at the end he hedges to the fact that probably a Razil Amalch that was published with all these other things inside it was never published by Kedusha. So even the Shemis inside of it were never published by Kedusha. And you could l'chayra burn it, says the Panamiris. So meaning the part of the Razil Amalch that popularized this skula, this idea that having them in your house is a shmir from fire, were full of crazy things. Now, the Panamir, I grab the Rav Nachman in Chaim Aran. Rav Nachman Bretzlav says that the Tzidua, there's a skula to have a Razil Amalch in your house and it will protect the house from being burnt. It says, and I myself have passed by many houses with the burnt Razil Amalch in the burnt house, says Rav Nachman. So it works wonderful. I've seen many burnt Razil Amalchs, it was Rav Nachman's ha'ara on that skula. So Akapanim, the skula started with the Sefer Razil Amalch. That itself is very suspect. Now, what's unique about Razil Amalch was that it's tziruf hashemis. It was very hard to understand. It was very lofty, and they made the school about it. It doesn't, it comes from wherever. Unclear where it comes from. Unclear where the school comes from. Rav Moshe in Tshuva writes that someone asked him if the school is true, that if you have Razil Amalch in your house, the house won't get burnt. Rav Moshe is very kind. Rav Moshe says he doesn't know. I don't know. Rav Nachman was a little more harsh. Rav Nachman says he saw many that got burnt. Now, what was it that inspired the Chassidish Welt to give the Sefer Noam Elimelech this same? Rather, incidentally, the Razil Amalch also had the skula for women who were in labor, to put it under the head for labor. So it's very similar to the skulas that are gezakt for Razil Amalch are said about the Noam Elimelech. Now, what is it that inspired them to say about the Noam Elimelech? So I have a few theories, but I don't know if any of them are true. I'll start with the ones that I think are least true to the most true. In the original edition of the Noam Elimelech, at all different intervals in the first editions, is these stars that are placed there. And they don't lead to anything. There's no footnotes, it doesn't go anywhere. The original Matfis put stars in the middle of it, and no one knows what it meant. Now, in the Chassidish Welt, there became an idea that every time there's a star in the Noam Elimelech over there, that's the place where Reb Melech had Aliyas Neshama. Where it got to the point of such holy Torah that were being sheared, that Elimelech had Aliyas Neshama, and this part's too much even to describe in words, and then it continues when he comes back down. So there is an element of, call it mystery, of Kabbalah and mystery that lingers in the Sefer that's hard to put your finger on. Maybe that's a reason. I don't think that's the reason. There's an interesting other reason is that his son, Rabbi Eliezer, in the Hakdama to the Sefer writes that his father used to always daven and care deeply that Jews and his Hasidim and people who came to him should have Yeshuas, all sorts of personal Yeshuas in their lives, etc. And he doesn't say directly the Sefer should bring those Yeshuas, but it's my tefillah that through the Sefer those same Yeshuas should come. So it could be from there it started the idea that through owning the Sefer, through possessing the Sefer, one taps onto the tefillahs of the Rebbe Melech and gets these skulas. And the third one, I think probably the most likely to be true, is that the Rebbe Melech, the Noam Elimelech, was not known to be. I want to say this the right way. He didn't have a famous yeshiva background. The Litvaks didn't know that he was a Talmud Chacham. Let's say there were other great Rebbes like the Mezritcher Magid who learned by the Pnei Yeshua, or the Kedushas Levi who was a Rav, or the Yismach Moshe. There were other original Chassidish Rebbes who even the Litvaks were forced to be moideh that he's a Talmud Chacham. That the guy was a Talmud Chacham. Okay, he's Chassidish. You don't like him. Even in the middle of all the fighting, you had to be moideh he was a Talmud Chacham. The Noam Elimelech, the Litvaks used to treat like he didn't know how to learn. The taina they said about him was he didn't know how to learn. So when his Sefer came out that showed that he clearly did know how to learn, and that was full of Tifa Teiris, it could be that it was a point of pride. Everyone should have one of these in their house, and things like that develop. When it becomes something that everyone should have one in their house, people attach sorts of schools to it. If you have one in your house is protected. It's a suggestion. I don't know if it's true, but it's a suggestion. I would think that perhaps the reason why the Noam Elimelech specifically got attached to these schools was because it was a point of contention to take the Noam Elimelech seriously or not. So having one in your house became a serious thing. Now, I'll just say this: so in regards to the makar of the school, it's kind of hard to know. In regard to the school being a good thing or a bad thing, I'll say this: certainly I'll say, let's say, like it's low risk, low reward. The Razil Amalach is very high risk. Maybe the school is like an amazing school. It does all sorts of crazy things for you because it's Tziruf Hashemis and it's Kabbalah Maisius and whatever. But it's high risk, high reward because it also might be Christian. It also might be being mishtamish with shemis that you're not supposed to be. And there's a big arichas on that. Maybe one day we'll talk about Kabbalah Maisius Bizman as that. So it's high risk, high reward. The Noam Elimelech is by all accounts a great sefer on Chumash. It's not Kabbalah Maisius, even if the stars were supposed to take him to some sort of Kabbalistic intentions, they aren't in the sefer. So it's low risk, low reward, meaning it's a nice sefer that people attach some scholars to that may or may not be the original school of the sefer. So it's low risk, low reward. It can't hurt you. Now, even on the Razil Amalach, there's a sefer Abayis, all the inyanim that are connected to a house, and in the back of it he has like in tiny letters he printed a Razil Amalach like in the last 5 pages. Like 20 pages per side, like a tiny thing. And he gives a hisnatzlus, the guy. He says, like, I know the Razil Amalach is not so simple, but I asked Rabbi Yashiv, and Rabbi Yashiv told me, as long as you don't actually read it, and you're not actually learning the Sefer Razil Amalach, you just want to have it in your house, l'shem the skula, so knock yourself out. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. So I would say the Noam Elimelech is certainly better on all regards. It doesn't have any of the risks associated with the Razil Amalach. Why exactly the schools of Razil Amalach got transferred to the Sefer Noam Elimelech, I can't exactly tell you. But l'chayra, it's low risk, low reward, and it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, what do you say?
Sponsored by Noam.
Sponsored by no. Next week, we'll start the sugi of matzah a little bit, and we'll spend a few weeks on that.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.